After hitting several islands in the Caribbean, tropical storm Elsa reaches Cuba, where some 180,000 people were preventively evacuated. Mapuche academic and activist Elsa Loncon was elected as chair of Chile's Constitutional Convention, while on the streets, riot police arrested over 60 demonstrators. More than 50 soldiers were killed and dozens injured after a military plane crash in the Philippines on Sunday. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your host, Gladys Quesada, and now we begin with the news. In Cuba, 180,000 people had already been evacuated before tropical storm Elsa reached the island this Monday morning. In its course, the storm has hit the islands of Barbados, St. Vincent, Haiti, Jamaica, St. Lucia, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, causing floods and damage to homes and crops. 2 people are reported dead in Dominican Republic and 1 in St. Lucia. Elsa touched the Cuban coast in the early hours of Monday, Cuban authorities reported. Preparations had been hectic over the weekend in the island through its civil defense system and social organizations to evacuate those at risk and ensure essential supplies. Elsa is expected to move across central and western Cuba later today, as the provinces of Cienfuegos, Matanzas, Camagüey, Ciego de Ávila, Santi Espíritus, Villa Clara, Mayabeque, and Havana are under a hurricane and tropical storm warnings. The collapsed building in Florida that left 24 dead and 121 missing was demolished Monday under the risk of nearby tropical storm Elsa, which caused difficult search and rescue labors. 2 more victims were found in the rubble of a partially collapsed apartment building in Florida on Saturday, bringing the death toll from last week's tragedy to 24, officials said. Demolition workers brought down the rest of the building, and they hope that this operation will open up new areas for rescue teams to continue with the search. The approach of Tropical Storm Elsa has accelerated the rhythm of the search and rescue crews. In other news, the inauguration ceremony for Chile's new constitutional convention was suspended Sunday amid clashes between the police and protesters in the capital, Santiago. The inauguration had been planned for 10 a.m. local time, but was postponed as police fired tear gas and used water cannons to disperse crowds outside the former Congress building. Some elected assembly members refused to participate in the ceremony as long as police special forces remained near the building. Chilean electoral officials said they will try to resume the inauguration ceremony later during the day.
I have also decided to invite you to suspend this session until noon today in order to ensure that the country is calm and that we can have the solemn audience as appropriate to these authorities and to our country.
And after 3 hours, the session was resumed, and Mapuche indigenous leader Elsa Loncon was elected as president of Chile's Constitutional Convention. Loncon has promised to legislate for indigenous people, for women's rights, and for gender diversity. This convention will have approximately 9 to 12 months to draft the new constitution.
This convention that today I have to preside will transform Chile into a plurinational, intercultural Chile, into a Chile that doesn't violate the rights of women and caregivers, into a Chile that cares for Mother Earth, into a Chile that also cleans the water against all kinds of domination.
The day will come when the United States shall recognize that a new world is in the making, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro said on national TV on Sunday.
The day will come when we will meet again in brotherhood, cooperation, friendship, mutual respect, the United States of America and Venezuela, but above all the elite of the United States of America, the military elites, business policy, financial communication, the elites who govern, who run that country, someday will understand that a new world has been born, a pluripolar, multicentric world, and that culture must be respected. The diversity, characteristics and specificity of all the peoples of the world, and there will Venezuela with its dignity, with its tricolor flag.
Maduro also reported on the state of Venezuela's vaccination campaign.
Today, I can say, at the level of vaccination that Venezuela has reached today, 2,508,200 vaccinated, which represents 11.4% of the population.
Hundreds of Brazilians have taken to the streets once again in Rio de Janeiro to demonstrate against President Jair Bolsonaro's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Protesters marched in the streets calling for the president's impeachment and demanding more vaccines. Bolsonaro's popularity has put to test over his response to the pandemic, which has left over 500,000 dead in the country. Brazil has the second highest death toll in the world after the US. It also has the third highest number of coronavirus cases at more than 16 million.
It is no longer possible to bear and tolerate the behavior that the country is being led by the genocidal president we have here.
There are more than 500,000 people dead, and what everyone knew has been explained now. There was corruption. So keeping a government like that, it is craziness.
Guatemala has received 200,000 Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccines from Russia, following controversy over the delay of the delivery of 8 million doses. The arrival of the Sputnik V vaccines comes after the government of President Alejandro Giammattei said that it was seeking to renegotiate the contract with Russia due to delays. Guatemala has paid $79.6 million to the Russian Direct Investment Fund for 8 million doses of Sputnik V, of which it had only received 150,000. The contract is for 16 million doses, but the government has said that it will not make more disbursements until it is certain that more shipments will arrive.
We are receiving a new bag of a Sputnik vaccine. We are receiving today at this moment. We are making it a public. It is a vaccine that is going to be used mainly to start with the vaccination of the teachers from Monday onwards. We will also be vaccinating in the general population, which is included in the national plan. But we will also give to priority the teachers in order to reactivate education at the national level as soon as possible.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. 45 people have been killed after a military plane crashed in southern Philippines. Dozens more are reported to have been pulled out alive from the burning wreckage, with some critically injured. The plane was carrying more than 90 people when it overshot the runway on Jolo Island. 5 people who were on board are still missing, and military rescue workers are still conducting a search operation around the area. Philippines Army officials said there was no sign that the aircraft had been attacked. And rescue teams are racing against the time to search for survivors and clean up debris in central Japan after a number of mudslides. According to authorities, the incident has left 2 people dead and 20 missing on Saturday morning. The disaster struck at about 10 a.m. local time in Atami City, southwest of Tokyo, as heavy rainfall swept areas along the Pacific coast in central and eastern Japan. At least 130 buildings in Isuhistan district of Atami were damaged due to the mudslide, according to local officials.
I went to the site and heard bam. Then I was shocked to see my friend's house was washed down by the mudslide. I cannot help screaming at the moment. It's so horrible. Another mudslide took place minutes later, and it just happened again and again, creating huge roars each time. There are some people I knew live in the disaster-hit area, so I am really worried about them, but I don't know how they're doing.
And local people have gathered in an evacuation center on Sunday after the mudslide that hit the Japanese coastal town of Atami the previous day. Rescuers searched for possible survivors, climbing on cracked roofs and searching cars that were thrown up top of buildings as rain continues to batter the region.
When I opened the door, everyone was rushing into the street, and a policeman came up to me and said, "What are you doing here? You have to hurry. Everyone is evacuating. The ground collapsed right next to you." So I went out in the rain in a hurry without changing with just a bag.
The landslide warning siren sounded, but at first I didn't think it was going to be that bad. But when I stepped outside later, the rumbling of the ground all around was very strong.
And Taliban fighters have captured key districts in Badakhshan and Kanda provinces as Afghan troops fled into neighboring Tajikistan. A statement released by the State Committee for National Security, more than 300 Afghan military men crossed from Afghanistan Badakhshan province as Taliban fighters advance towards the border. Families have also fled the area. The captured Kanda province is originally Taliban's birthplace, which went under to rule Afghanistan until they were overthrown by the US-led invasion in 2001. The Taliban now controls roughly a third of all 421 districts and several district centers in Afghanistan.
There is no peace. Would peace be making the people suffer? If one helicopter comes, it will be enough for all of Kandahar. Why don't they use helicopters against the Taliban? They targeted me and were trying to kill me. If they kill me, then who would look after my children?
The situation is getting worse. The police and border forces are faced with equipment problems. The commandos and National Army are based a bit far away, and we are on the front line.
Indonesian hospitals have run out of oxygen as COVID-19 continues rising in the Asian country. Several hospitals across Indonesia have reported about the severe lack of oxygen cylinders and have attributed the shortage to soaring COVID-19 cases. Patients have been forced to buy their own oxygen tanks to save their infected members. Indonesia is experiencing a new wave of the pandemic, driven by the highly contagious Delta variant.
This line is up to 20 meters long. I have been waiting for 1 hour. My husband is in the hospital and the staff told us they have run out of oxygen, so we have to look for tanks ourselves.
And Cuban-made vaccines have been praised for having high efficacy rates. The 5 jabs candidates under development have passed all 3 clinical trial phases internationally required for vaccines. One of them, Abdallah, has shown efficacy of 92.8%. The other, Soberana 02, registered 62% efficacy. In relation with the ethical principles of the Cuban Revolution, the vaccines will be made available to fellow developing countries under fair conditions.
The serious problem we have had, and we continue to have in our region, is precisely the availability of vaccines. All our countries have started to vaccinate, but we are going slowly because, of course, we depend on this valuable input.
Just like everything Cuba does, just like it sends doctors on missions, this vaccine is going to be useful for all the countries that are poor, that are less developed.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Egypt has officially unveiled a strategic Mediterranean naval base. The naval base, which is set to secure shipping lines in the Mediterranean Sea, was officially opened by the country's president Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The new military base, located 255 kilometers west of Alexandria towards the border with Libya, will be focused on securing the country's northern and western front. Egypt has 3 other naval bases in the Mediterranean and 1 in the Red Sea. A South African top court has agreed to hear former President Jacob Zuma's challenge against his legal sentence and contempt charges. The country's constitutional court sentenced Zuma to 15 months in jail on Tuesday for failing to appear at the corruption inquiry led by Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo in February. Zuma was initially given until the end of Sunday to hand himself in, after which police will be obliged to arrest him, but the court has agreed to hear his application on July 12. And scores of supporters of the South African former leader Jacob Zuma, who were camping at his hometown, have vowed to make the country ungovernable if he is arrested, and are now calling for the country's president Cyril Ramaphosa to resign.
Ramaphosa must step down. Back ANC from Stellenbosch. Must step down. As from Monday. We will make the country ungovernable. We'll make the country ungovernable.
And thousands have taken to the streets in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou, to protest against rising jihadist killings. The protests came after 130 people were killed last month in a jihadist massacre. The protesters demanded the government to ensure security from the attackers and that thousands of people displaced by fighting be allowed to return to their homes peacefully. The West African country has been facing an increase in attacks by jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State since 2015.
This is the place for us to call on the head of state to take the problem seriously, because you know that is inadmissible that people can walk around with impunity in our territory, committing despicable acts and live serenely.
And women activists in Senegal have demonstrated in the capital Dakar against increasing rape cases in the African country. Dozens of the demonstrators denounced the country's justice system for not issuing different sentences to rapists. They also slammed the country's cultural system for being harsh towards women. The activists demanded the government to provide structures, shelters, and everything needed to support rape victims.
We expect the state to provide structures, shelters, and everything needed to support victims. What we want from the state today is for women, who make up more than half the population, to feel safe. And if we don't feel safe in our homes, if we don't feel safe in the street, and we don't feel safe at all with the state and the justice system, there is a problem. And we cannot continue to live in a country that does not consider us.
And Ethiopian soldiers captured by the Tigray Defense Force have walked towards Mekelle Rehabilitation Center in the capital of the Tigray region. According to the Tigray Defense Forces, more than 7,000 captive Ethiopian soldiers have walked from Abdi Eshir, about 75 kilometers southwest of Mekelle, for 4 days. The rebels marched into the city this week after local officials and federal government troops pull out, and the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has since declared an unilateral ceasefire. At least 4 people have lost their lives after one of the worst forest fires run ablaze in Cyprus. The fire, which started on Saturday afternoon, destroyed homes and forced thousands of people to be evacuated from their villages. Several countries have deployed firefighting aircraft to the Mediterranean islands to try and put out the fire. The fire has been described to be the largest since 1974. Cyprus local media has reported that a 67-year-old man had been arrested on suspicion starting the blaze.
I saw the fire approaching from the top of the mountains. Immediately, we took the car of my child and we drove towards Pharmacas. We informed the authorities that there was a fire. but unfortunately, the planes and the fire services arrived very late.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.